Hello and welcome to an episode of BTech. Today we're working on the Rav4. For those who haven't seen the other Rav4 videos, this is a 2006 Rav4. It's the V6 with the 2GR FE, and it is all-wheel drive. We do have some modifications done to it. It does have the racing brakes on there. We are running the Bilstein suspension, and it is raised about 2 inches, and the car is widened with 1-inch spacers, hub-centric spacers. And we also have, as you can see there, helper airbags in the rear. A few other light modifications done to it. We do drive this car every day. I also take it off-roading pretty frequently. We drive it pretty hard, and it has really served us well without any major problems. We've broken CV joints and off-roading it hard, but I'd say that's pretty expected. And we might be diagnosing the first major problem this car has had. So I was just driving it on the road the other day. It was under load, accelerating from a stop. Heard a really loud bang. It sounded like it came from the drivetrain. No indicator lights came on. And what happened since then is the car at high speed drives perfectly fine. You can't tell a difference. At low speed, you'll hear a really loud clunking, and you'll hear a clunking out from start. Now what that means to me is that the main part of the transmission is probably fine, and because I don't see any problems with CV joints anywhere around, it's probably not the CV joints. So that leads us to the all-wheel drive system. It could be part of the transmission, kind of like the transfer case in this car that sends power down the drive shaft to the rear end. It could be any part of the rear end or rear half shafts. So we're going to start diagnosing it today. The first thing that we're going to do is just throw a GoPro under there to see if we can see what's going on. We'll drive it around making the clunking, and we'll aim the GoPro at different parts of the drivetrain to see if it gives us any indication of what's going on. Now I will say I was pretty busy, so I actually just took this to my local shop. It's the highest rated local shop in the area. They do a lot of different custom work. They had it for a day, did a diagnosis, charged me $100 and said, who knows, it could be the transmission or the rear end, which is basically what I already knew. And they said they wouldn't fix it. So we are left doing it ourselves as usual. So let's get started. Pull the drive shaft off and see if that changes anything. All right, to pull the drive shaft off this, we just have to undo the bolts in the front there. We have to undo the bolts at this joint here, and the bolts back at the rear end, the rear differential. So let's pull those off, drop the drive shaft, and see how that changes things. All right, so we have the drive shaft unbolted in all 3 spots, and we're gonna pull it down now. All right, we got the drive shaft off. It's not clear how to easily separate it here. Maybe take that boot off or something, but it wasn't necessary. The hard part is this drive shaft's never been off before. This car is almost 20 years old. It's driven a lot. So these parts where they connect to the front and rear were seized on there. On the back here, I was able to get a pry bar under it and pry it off. It was challenging, but I was able to do it. On the front, and I'll show you under the car in a second here, but in the front, it was extremely hard. I had it soaked for a long time with Gibbs. I used all sorts of pry bars, wouldn't budge. Heated it up with the torch a bunch, wouldn't budge. And ultimately, I really don't like to use the air hammer because, you know, I'm in a residential area here, but I had to use the air hammer, and I really had to dig into it with the air hammer to get it loose, and then was able to easily pull it off. I really wish manufacturers would use some type of anti-seize to keep that from happening, but that's never going to happen. Obviously, when we put it back on there, we're going to put some anti-seize on the surface to keep it from doing that. I do the same thing on my discs for my disc brakes to make it easy to take those on and off so they don't seize on there. I mean, basically, there's anti-seize on everything that I don't want Loctited on. So let's go into the car and I'll show you what we were working with up front, which made it really challenging. All right, we're going to the front of the car now. Guess I'll show you the rear too. On it. So there's the rear end. You can see one of the studs came off. We'll Loctite that in, the red Loctite, when we put it back together, so it doesn't do that again. It's always a pain when that happens. Now, up front, we didn't have any studs come off, luckily, and to get the nuts off, it's so tight in there. I had to use my 3/8 hand tools on a swivel extension. And luckily they're not on there that tight, actually. I was able to get them off, but it was real tight. I didn't have to rotate the drive shaft. I actually could get my hand tools in there for all of them and do it with just my 3/8 inch hand tools, but it was pretty much at the limits of that. Now, you can see how seized on it was and how tight it was in there. And you can see up on the top left where we used the air hammer on it to budge it loose, and then it came right off. But whew, they really make that hard to get to. Well, it's just how it is. Luckily we got it off. So let's take it for a drive and see what it sounds like. Let's take it for a quick drive and see if you can hear anything. Alright, so it's not making any noise when we have the drive shaft off, which is great because it's kind of like a pseudo fix. Obviously that's something to do with the all-wheel drive system. Still hard to tell whether it's coming from the front side or the rear side, but it has to do something with, with actually trying to drive the power from the front of the front where the transfer case is back to the rear end. Not really sure exactly what to do to troubleshoot it at this point. So if y'all have tips, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm probably going to drive around it like this for a while, not take it off-road until we can think of something. Hard way of doing it would be to start replacing the easiest stuff first. You know, replace the rear drivetrain. It's kind of old and rusty anyway, especially the old half shafts. But that's not the most economical way, obviously, not the most elegant way. So it would really be nice to figure it out in a way that's a bit more intelligent, a bit more crafty. So if y'all have any ideas, let me know. Thanks for watching. Until next time.